Good morning and welcome to Clearing a Path to Your Health with Caroline. And wherever you are, I wish you a very warm welcome. So it's 6 o'clock here in Europe, 7 o'clock in Europe, 6 o'clock here in the UK, and 10 a.m. Pacific in America. So I am so excited about today's conversation. So I wanted to do this show because I think there is a new phrase that has been introduced into the parlance in the last 9 to 12 months, which is cognitive dissonance. Dissonance, even if I could speak English, it would help at this juncture. Anyway, so wanted to bring in somebody like Mo so that we can just really get to the bottom of what it is. So Mo, thank you so much for joining me. Those of you who don't know him, he's a colleague on 1-2 Lesson. He's a Vedic astrologer and deals with the tarot and is just an all-round good egg. Welcome to my show, Mo.
Thank you. A good egg, which is better than, a bad egg, I guess. So. And thank you, and good morning and good evening to you.
Thank you very kindly. Okay, so what I think I'd like to do, just before we get into the juicy conversation that I know we're going to have, is talk a little bit about what is cognitive dissonance, and then I'll throw it back to Mo to see what he has to say. So for me, I have two very good examples of cognitive dissonance in my own life. So the first one was I went to a doctor. I had a hacking bad cough. I was a heavy smoker. And he said to me, Caroline, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to die. Those were his exact words. And I walked out of the building and I lit a cigarette and I said, that idiot. I didn't say that, but that's what I'm going to say for the radio. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So he said something to me that was in conflict with what I believed, which was smoking wasn't going to harm me. You speak to any smoker, they kind of know that it's bad for you, but they don't think it's going to happen to them. There's a real disconnect between the health facts and whether or not it's going to hurt you. So my second version of that is I was an alcoholic for a very, very long time. Only I didn't know I was an alcoholic because my belief system was that alcoholics sat on a park bench with a filthy mac on, hurling abuse at passers-by with a can of special brew or whatever their liquor was, in a brown paper bag with string around their waist. That was what I had persuaded myself, or society had persuaded me. I don't know how I got that information into my brain, was an alcoholic. I didn't look like that and I didn't act like that. So therefore I wasn't an alcoholic. It wasn't until I went into treatment and they stopped me drinking and I went through horrendous withdrawal. It took me a long time to even really come around to, possibly I'm an alcoholic, but it was at such odds with what I thought I was that I couldn't accept it. Now, you say that to a normal, rational person and they'd be like, well, of course you're an alcoholic. You can't get through the day without drinking. I swear to you, from the time that I started drinking till my 40th birthday when I got sober, I had no clue. I knew that I drank, but I didn't know that I had to drink and that it was my emotional crutch and all of that. So I'm just saying that those are two examples from my life that I plucked from the air really easily. I'm sure there's lots and lots of different examples, but to me, cognitive dissonance is when I'm faced with something that, because of my belief about myself or my behavior, I can't accept to be true. So plucking an example out of the air, if everybody told me that the sky was blue all my life and then somebody, waltzed up to me and said, hey, look, the sky's yellow, it would be very difficult for me to believe the person who's saying the sky is yellow, because everything I know and all my behaviors and beliefs are that the sky is blue. He or she could be right, but I won't be able to look at it because I'm so entrenched in my behaviors and the way I think. So the only thing that I will say to add to that before I hand over to Mo is that I think within yourself that something's not right. You may not, I never knew that smoking was going to be really bad for me. I did know that on a cognitive level, but I didn't believe it would happen to me, even though the truth was I was really, really coughing all the time. I mean, I was really, really ill, but even that didn't persuade me that I should give up smoking. And so what I'm trying to say is there was something in me that knew, but I didn't know it enough to want to change my behavior, or I couldn't accept it in a way that allowed me to see reality as it really was. So cognitive dissonance, to me, dissonance, if I could say the blooming word, is something that causes me discomfort because I know something's out of balance, but I'm not in a place where I can actually do something about it. Okay, so that's my take on it, Mo. I'm so excited you're here. I'm wondering what your take on the word cognitive dissonance is.
Well, it's fascinating that you used, Caroline, that you used the sky was blue or yellow, because there's a Grateful Dead song, and it is known far and wide that I am what is known as a deadhead. And far from being a skull on a body, although there is one, hopefully still, I'm a Grateful Dead fan, and it's an affliction because the music goes through your head day and night, night and day, but it's really far out, So anyway, there was a song called Scarlet Begonias, and toward the end of the song, there was a line, "The sky was yellow and the sun was blue." So,
wow.
Yeah, and it's a hotly debated lyric. It's hotly debated, and I understand exactly what it means. And that is that it's talking about hallucinating, because that's
I did think that when you said that. I was like, yes.
Yeah. I remember that. But the thing about that is that is kind of the world. I'm not going to pin you down or ask you about LSD or other things of the 60s, 70s, but one of the things that happened was that sort of cognitive dissonance. You would see something knowing it wasn't real, but you had to accept it or something. You know what I mean? And it was
something.
Or so something.
Just to be really clear for all my listeners, I must have died of a drug overdose in a former life, because this addict, and I am very, very addictive in every single area of my life, I never took a single pill in my life. And people would buy it for my birthday, and I'd be like, no, thank you. Like, literally, I can't understand why I didn't, because, like I say, I know I'd be dead if I had started taking that, because I don't have an off switch. But so that's me. But I do.
I was not so out of it, to be honest. I sought it out because I was looking for that which was being touted about it. And so there's a good example of that, because everyone said it's dangerous, you'll throw yourself in front of a train. And I never had that experience, but we knew going into it that it was dangerous. You just, because you never knew exactly how, and now they're using it psychologically, but that's a good example. Anytime, I've known, unfortunately, I've known heroin addicts and so on, who have not made it, and they all said, it won't happen to me. I can handle it. And that concept of cognitive dissonance is old. I mean, it's been around since the 50s. And the idea was, how can we continue to do something when, in fact, we know that it is injurious to us or is absolutely wrong? And I have a lot of thoughts on that because, I've been a reader for a long time. And you get to kind of feel for it. They used to call it denial, And we're seeing it really a lot lately with people who are denying that there is a pandemic going on, and denying that the coronavirus is real, and denying that this is something that they need to mask up or be prepared for. And what's happening is a lot of these people are getting sick and dying or getting close to death, and they're coming out and saying, believe it, it's real. It's absolutely real. And so even in the face of that, there will be people who won't. And it has to do, I think, with the fact that as human beings, we are incredibly curious. Yes. We have a curiosity for everything. And we also don't always have the ability to understand how things actually work. So this is part of this is superstition. I had a superstition before I lost my virginity. And, those of you who are more sensitive, I apologize for this. But before I lost my virginity, I believed that I was immortal, that I could not die. And I was 47 when I finally did. And
Wow.
no, I'm kidding. I was much younger than that, but I was in my late teens. And the day, I really did. I would walk out in front of cars if I, wasn't paying attention, and they would stop. I'm immortal. They didn't hit me. And then the day after I lost my virginity, I was extremely careful from then on, because I thought, this can happen now. Now, that belief of mine was erroneous. It was ridiculous and stupid. I smoked. Why did I smoke? Well, because most of my great heroes as a kid smoked. My parents smoked for a little while, but they weren't my heroes per se. Later they were. But Mickey Mantle. Do you know who Mickey Mantle was?
I'm sorry to say that I don't.
That's kind of refreshing, actually. Mickey Mantle was a huge, big deal baseball player back in the 50s. And I grew up with Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and Yogi Berra and all these sports fellows who were that were really almost, it was a form of idolatry, watching these guys play ball. And there was an ad of Mickey Mantle with a Camel cigarette between his fingers, and he smoked. He said, "My doctor told me to smoke Camels," or something like that. So,
which is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is. Well, they used to have ads about that, and on TV, Perry Mason shows, I Love Lucy, almost every show. As a matter of fact, on The Honeymooners, they would smoke, and they would smoke a specific brand of cigarette. Pall Mall was big. I don't know if when you smoked, did you smoke Pall Malls ever?
No, gosh, I was far too cool for that.
Oh, Pall Malls.
I was a Marlboro girl.
Well, Marlboro, I did those. Camels, Camel filters. And the truth of the matter is, when I started, I was relatively young. And so what am I thinking about lung cancer and death at the age of 15?
I know. And I want to interject here and just say, one of the things I was thinking about when I was getting ready for this radio show was the arrogance of youth, exactly what you've talked about. Unfortunately, that didn't leave me until I got sober. So I still, at the age of 35, 36, walked in front of cars thinking they had brakes. And I'm testament to the fact that they do. But I would jump on a plane and go off to Latin America without thinking about safety. That's a little bit my personality, and and I don't, if I'm frightened of something, I make myself do it. So yeah, I have lived a very interesting life, but I just remember, like now, if I look at young lads who've just started to drive, for example, I'm like, you're going to crash if you drive like that. But I'm sure I did the same. I'm sure you probably did the same. We all think that we're invincible, and it kind of usually goes in sort of late 20s, early 30s when people settle down and have kids. I forgot to do that, so maybe that's why mine lasted longer.
Well, and as well, I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I'd finished.
I was just going to say that some people never grow out of it, or it just segues into something else. I am not a big fan of conspiracy theories. I think that they harm us. I figure that if I can't do anything about it, who cares? Illuminati, maybe, probably not. Who cares? I don't care. I
will say to that, and sorry, I did definitely interrupt you there. The only thing I will say to that is everything is a conspiracy theory until it's proved to be right.
It can be.
Never say never. But yes, that's why I wanted to talk about cognitive dissonance, because I do feel at the moment there's a bit of a war going on this planet. Most people that are empaths and, light workers and stuff can feel that things are changing and we're going to move into a new world and all of that, whether it's involved with what you just mentioned or not. And I think cognitive dissonance has become a phrase because we don't know where we're going, and it feels.
But we never know where we're going. We never know where we're going. I mean, here's the point for me is that 1968 was a rough year. And it was a tough year on this planet, especially in this country. And there was that we did not have a pandemic going on, but there were riots in the streets. Cities were being burned down. People were being killed. There was open battle between generations. There were radical underground movements. And the whole point of it is that we never know where that's going to lead. Now, to be back here in the year 2020 and be dealing with this deadly virus, and this is why I don't care about conspiracy theories. It's not a matter for me of never say never. I always say never say never. I say anything's possible, but I also say who cares? Yeah. If it's a conspiracy, who cares? It doesn't mean I'm not going to wear a mask. You know, my brother contracted this disease, and he is still dealing with it, and may be dealing with the aftermath of this for the rest of his life. My nephew, who is 18 years old, had symptoms for one day. But to this day, and it's been months, but to this day, he cannot smell or taste anything.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thanks. But, you know, it was a flagrant disregard for the facts, for the science, for the idea that, you know, when we err on the side of danger, let's say, right? Now, here's a good example. There is a phenomenon that I am seeing with extreme regularity, and that is normal, regular people like you and like me, who believe, I won't, who believe in, I've never been normal, but I pull it off.
Sorry.
Who believe in zombies. Okay. And not in the zombies of Haiti, the Voodoo, right? With the blowfish toxin, and with enslaving people psychologically after they believe they're dead, and so on and so forth. But the zombies, as invented by George Romero in Night of the Living Dead in 1968, I think it was, and then later on with his addition of then they want to eat your brains, and there are movie shows about it and TV shows about it, and there's an entire culture about it. An old friend of mine wrote a novel about it, and there are people who actually believe it. Now, that is bizarre, but that is cognitive dissonance. It's like people who actually believe in werewolves, or people actually believe in vampires. Now, I believe in ghosts, but I saw it when I was a kid. I was able to prove it. But the point of it is that we have to have that sense of doubt. And when something comes along that easily explains something that we can't fathom, we're liable to jump on it and to ride it because it's a fun ride. Yeah. You know, it's fun to believe in zombies, I guess. Now, there are crazy people in the world. I shouldn't use that term because I don't know what it means. But, they're the type of people who will become a zombie or become a cannibal or become a vampire or whatever, but they're not actually like in the stories. You know, when you read Dracula, if you read it a few times, you begin to realize that it's a xenophobic story written by Bram Stoker, who was saying that Eastern Europeans were coming to London in the 1800s and taking rich British women, and they were coming for their money, you know, and it's an amazing story that way, and it's not the basis for an entire reality, right? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I completely do, and I just want to make a comment. This is making me laugh a lot. I've never, ever had a conversation about zombies before. I love that it's coming up on my show about cognitive dissonance, because to me they don't exist because I've never read any of the stories. I can't go and watch horror. I'm an empath. I've never been able to, even if people are being catty to each other, I walk away because I don't like conflict. Like, I can deal with conflict in my own life, but if somebody else outside of me is murdering, like, I don't watch TV. I definitely don't watch horror. I mean, yeah, so you're talking to someone who doesn't believe in zombies because I've never encountered them in my
Right.
life.
Well,
How
and
funny
you
is
see, the
that?
thing is this, I don't either. I know better. I've studied this stuff all my life. Here's an example. Back in the early 70s, I went with a friend to a drive-in movie to watch Enter the Dragon, the Bruce Lee movie.
Yeah.
And we got stoned, really, really, really stoned. And we were young, very young. And the movie came on, and it wasn't Enter the Dragon first. It was a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, Lordy.
Now, yeah, it was not a fun. It was not fun. I'll just say that. And I used to. I don't like slashing anymore. But when I was young, you get into things, and I thought this is, if it's a regular movie, and it's a movie, you know that these are actors. But at the beginning, it said this is based entirely on real things that happened in Texas. This is all fact. Now, what that seeks to do, and it was a brilliant move because it absolutely severed the tie with reality, right? Mm-hmm. Or the tie with doubt. So you're saying, this is a real story. Oh, God, And then this horrible thing evolves, and it left me shaken, a little traumatized for a while. I got over it. But it also clues me into how we think. Because if someone said, this is the truth, this happened, then they show you what happened, you are going to believe it happened, then to find out that it was a lie. None of that was true.
No, but I'm really, this is bringing to mind something that I maintain, and that is most people never see a murder, never see a dead body in the street. But you only have to watch NYPD or, whatever, and you're watching one or two or three murders every hour. And I think somehow that has infiltrated our psyche. I think Hollywood has a lot to answer to, because I do strongly believe that human beings are at their core kind, loving, collective, collaborating beings. And yet what we're shown relentlessly is, lone gunmen and, people who murder people out of rage or jealousy. I haven't watched TV for about 10 years for this reason, because I think it's not good for my spiritual well-being and my health. And it just astounds me how gruesome some of the scenes, I like to go to the cinema, but I like it to be real. So I don't mind watching, perhaps something that's a bit brutal if it's a real story. But then sometimes you're just like, I can't believe people do that. In my world, on my planet, I don't want that to be a reality. But I love what you're saying. I think it's highly amusing that we're talking about getting stoned and taking drugs on a Clearing Your Path to Health show.
Well, I'm not the healthiest guy. You knew the job was dangerous when you asked me on. So
No, and me neither. I sometimes say, like you, I've lost a lot of friends to heroin overdoses, drug overdoses, alcoholism, and that's what happens when you get sober. I think, not everybody manages to stay the course, and I'm very proud that I'm 13 years sober, but I keep thinking,
good for you, by the way. I actually quit everything the minute I found out I was going to become a father.
Oh, that's
so it's been a long time. I've been a father for 41 years,
Congratulations.
And thanks. And I just said, that's it, no more of this stuff, none of it.
Good for you. But for me, drinking. It's like every now and again, I think we're going to go to the break in a minute. Every now and again, I'm just really like, why am I still here? I've really not given my body the best opportunity to be healthy. But here I am, 54 years old, still alive, very happy to be here. And there's a little bit of me that thinks if this war is going on, I feel that right here, right now, I'm here. I don't quite know what my role is in the new thing that we're going into, whatever shape that takes, but I know that I'm still here because I'm gonna hold hands for those people that are gonna be waking up soon or whatever. So I love this conversation, Mo. So
me too. You're here for a reason, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And well, you are too. And yeah, it's really interesting hearing your story because it's a little bit similar to mine. When we come back from the break, I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional abuse and toxic relationships and how we can have cognitive dissonance within those. And I'm sure we'll find lots more to talk about. So, but I did forget at the beginning of the show, I forgot to thank Scott, my producer. So thank you so much, Scott Weaver, for putting this together for us. I can see lots of people are in the chat room, so thank you for that. And what I'll just quickly take a moment to say before we do go to the break. So group sessions are still going on a Friday, so do have a look at those if you're interested. And also I've started doing wellness scopes, which are once a month, sign by sign, a little bit of a prediction for what's coming for the next month. So that's great. And then my next guest on this radio show is going to be Sarah Cox. Now, she's a phenomenal lady. I'm so excited she's coming on. She is the lady that's responsible for, I think, me still being here. So I've got great love and admiration for her. And we're going to talk about the amazing power of your thoughts. So that will also be a really good show. So do join us for that if you can. Okay, so I think I forgot to say to Scott that we were going to take a break. So maybe we should just carry on then. Perhaps that's what we'll do.
All right, let's go. Let's run with the ball, as we say in this country.
Okay, so yes, don't know anything about baseball or American football. Can't have a conversation with that.
Yes,
okay.
It's boring. But that's just, I mean, I like baseball. I was an umpire, so, I like baseball. It's what baseball is good for?
What?
Eating peanuts and drinking beer and scoring the game on a hot summer's day. They
make a lot of movies about it, don't they?
They do, because it becomes extremely caught up in the emotions of youth, for boys mainly.
Oh.
It becomes part of, I'm an American, and, I played baseball, and baseball makes grown men cry, So
wow.
that and yo-yos, I experienced that personally when I saw grown men, when I was doing yo-yo tricks, weeping because it reminded them of their youth. And it's like, wow, okay,
Yeah. Wow. Especially in a culture where men don't usually cry, or are starting to much better now, I think. It's got a lot better.
I think so, but it's not always genuine,
No, that's true.
We've learned from the media that you can pretend to cry, because there are a lot of TV shows that have people who cry on them in this country, and they don't shed a tear. They just scrunch up their face, and there's not a tear there. And you're thinking to yourself, now, come on, a real actor, actress, or the same thing, actor, can shed a tear. They can get something to come out, But most of these people, they just go through the motions. And I've seen people in real life doing that. Now, that's cognitive dissonance, because they know they're not. That's just lying.
Yeah,
but,
that's lying. I don't think that's cognitive dissonance.
This is a strange country. I mean, I've been here my whole life, most of it. I actually was born in the UK. I was born in Reading, Caroline.
Oh, me too. Well, no, yeah. I lived in Reading. I wasn't born there.
I was born in what used to be known as Battle Hospital. So you might.
Yes, I do know that.
And so I love telling people I was born in what used to be a workhouse.
That's okay. I was born in an old people's home.
Wow. See, that's great. Yeah. That's rich. And my parents were.
I think as well, because I'm such an old soul, because there was an infection, shut the maternity ward over at the hospital in Swindon. And so we were all sort of shipped out and I blamed that on my sugar addiction, because the nurse who delivered me said, when my mum couldn't breastfeed me, she said, oh, give her evaporated milk with 2 spoonfuls of sugar in. So the first thing I drank was like highly sweetened milk with sugar in it.
Wow.
Yeah. I blame her. Anyway, okay, so let's go to, if we can, because I know that you read a lot. So I think the thing about people who give advice in the way that we do, we tend to meet people who, really have lived, and often who've experienced some emotional abuse or physical abuse or a traumatic situation, but aren't really aware of exactly what went on, or possibly the ramifications within their life. So I just wanted to talk to that a little bit, because I wanted to get your take on that if I can. So when you are a small child, your parents are supposed to love you. They're supposed to cherish you, support you, and just generally make you into a good human being. When that doesn't happen, when you receive emotional abuse, is what I call it. So your parents are super critical of you, they neglect you, they abandon you, they don't give you the love that you need, the support, they don't cherish you, all of that, which sadly happens in more family homes than I think we're aware of. But anyway, that behavior goes against the God-given belief that we have in ourselves that I am a very valuable, lovable child. So I learn from my parents that I'm not lovable, but actually inherently we have the belief, because we all are lovable, adorable children of God. And that's what starts to feel really horrid. And in my case, I picked up addictions, alcoholism, smoking, all of that stuff, because of the pain that I was feeling inside, because my parents were so awful to me. So that sometimes then leads into what I would call toxic relationships, because I don't value myself, I don't love myself, because my parents taught me that there was nothing lovable there. We can go into relationships where there's gaslighting, and we end up not trusting what we know to be true about ourselves, that we are valuable, that we are lovable, and that we are children of God, because this individual that I'm in a relationship is now telling me that I'm worthless, that it's all my fault, that they've done nothing, typical gaslighting behavior. So my own experience of this has been, there are 3 or 4 things that you can do if that resonates with you. So the first one is get away from this toxic individual. I know if you're a child, it's quite difficult to get away from your parents, but get away whenever you can. Focus on the positive things that you know to be true about you. So this person's telling you you're useless, you're worthless. Go inside and go, do you know what? That's absolute rubbish. I am valuable. I am lovable. And find things about yourself that you do love. And I know that's difficult when you've been told you're worthless, but there's always going to be something that you can find that to tell yourself that you're lovable, so that this gaslighting doesn't have any effect on you. Go to therapy, go to therapy, go to therapy. I think it's really important when you've had your reality questioned by the very people that should have been supporting you. So in this case, parents. For me, this was invaluable learning that what I thought about myself wasn't true. I'm so grateful that I went through all that really difficult therapy, because I believed everything they told me because I had no self-worth. And therapy taught me that there was a different way to look at it. So go to therapy. Find a good therapist. That's important. But the other is about building self-confidence. So spending time with people that nourish you and make you feel great about yourself, so that the gaslighting individual suddenly becomes less important in your life, and you can go off and find, be in a relationship where you're nourished. Because I always find these people come to me and they're like, oh, he makes me feel so awful. So why are you still there? Oh, but I love him. And that always perplexes me, because having done all this work on myself now, I don't think I could stay in a relationship for 10 minutes if I didn't feel cherished and loved. It's taken me a long time, so I'm not perfect. But so I feel that our society is really rampant with this lack of knowledge of self, lack of love of self, lack of ability to know the truth about ourselves. And that's possibly why there are so many instances of gaslighting, in brackets, politicians, out of brackets, and Hollywood, and all these sources that we watch and we absorb all the information from, that tell us how to be, and it may not be in alignment with who we are. That's what I wanted to say. How did that land, Mo?
Landed well. I mean, my issue was with my mother mainly, because she was an old country Egyptian, and And the whole thing was, Egyptians kind of have kids, and they let the kids kind of wander around the house like cats, as long as they grow up to become a doctor and support them. That's how that kind of goes.
I have heard that, actually.
Yeah. And I did not fit that paradigm in any way, shape, or form. My father seemed to kind of understand me. He was an academic. He was a brilliant man and a wonderful man. And my mom was also extremely intelligent, but extremely wound up tightly. She was, wow, really something. And so we fought constantly. And even though I fought the way she felt about me, because I turned into a hippie freak. And I turned into a hippie freak probably 99% because I did not want to conform. Because their ideas, my mom's idea of confirmation was, of conforming, I should put it that way, since we weren't Catholic, but of conforming was to follow her plan for me. Now, this is interesting because I have many relatives, of course, in the old country, very few here. But the ones in the old country did what their mothers and fathers wanted them to do. And their lives are highly successful, So, and they get in relationships and they are happily married and this and that. So I learned later on, for example, with my ex-wife, in the 20-some years I knew her, I don't think she ever said to me, "I love you." Right?
Wow.
Yeah. But I persisted. And even in the time we were courting, she could be difficult on me. And I embraced her even more. So you talk about messed up, right? And I see it, and I'm sure that's because that's what I believed in, but it was also what I was used to.
Yeah.
I was used to the battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, cognitive dissonance is one thing. Delusion is quite another. I believe that as long as you can completely be realistic and understand where you are and be honest about it, it's okay. And you make a conscious decision to either live with the situation or not. And if there's a reason to stay within the situation, sometimes it's obligation, I stayed with my ex-wife until my kids were of an age that I was sure that I could leave and still be a part of their lives, but they could be more or less okay, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I won't get into any of the details, but I made a decision, and I made that decision, I think, soundly, and it worked out really, really well. They're great people. I have grandchildren, and I'm still alive. That's a good thing. So, but in the long run, what it comes down to is being able to look at your life and say, this is my reality. I either reject it or I accept it. If I reject my reality, then I'm living in a world of delusion and illusion, and I'm weak. I'm without any energy. We're seeing that on a world level right now. We're seeing that. And I'm not going to get into politics because, once again, the only thing I can do is vote, And because I know people don't, people, especially the people who are, there's a whole new right-wing national like a supremacist, white supremacist, but not just white, but a nationalism movement that's going on in this country that has been present my entire life in one form or another. Is just now they're pulling out the swastikas. The American Nazi Party has always been here.
About politics, remember?
No, it's not political.
So we're going to
it's not political. Caroline, no, it's not political. It's ideological. Okay. How do people follow something like that? What is it that allows them to follow something like that? It's false answers, or sometimes maybe real answers for some people.
They say extreme poverty, the best way to make people revolt and have, go to war and create terror and things is to take away their water, take away their arable land, which, the West has been. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Does it boil down to one word?
Totally
but one word.
That's my
fear.
Go on. Yes.
That's what it's all about. Fear.
Absolutely. And I also want to say something that I learned in treatment, which was denial is don't even know that I'm lying. And that was so true. That's almost what we're talking about, isn't it? I had no clue. And then I'm sitting in this room full of really intelligent, really creative, wonderfully entertaining, gorgeous people going, wow, he's a heroin addict and she's an alcoholic. And that's, I was really, really shocked. So I think one of the things that my life has enabled me to do is to really, my parents were both teachers, and we traveled around Europe and behind the Iron Curtain and Eastern Bloc and all of that, camping for 3 months because they were both teachers. And what she taught me, and I love the way she did it, she did a lot of things wrong, but this she did really, really well. She said, they do this differently. It may not be nice. It may be fantastic. You need to try it. So she would give us things to eat that they were eating in the street, and sometimes they were adorable, really, really great, and sometimes they were disgusting. But she would also take us into mosques and take us into, old cathedrals and take us into museums, because I think she just wanted us to see a very broad spectrum of life. And, they're both teachers. Of course, education was really important, but I'm really grateful for that, because in my later life, when I was just traveling, I have this inherent curiosity about how people do things differently to me. And sometimes I think, gosh, I'm really happy to be English and I can have an opinion and be really strong and a strong woman in a society where I'm really almost allowed to say whatever I think. But some cultures where family is super. In Egypt, this is what I thought. I got taken to a family and there was 9 million people in the room. I mean, it was ridiculous. There was a lot of people in the room, and I was the only white person there. I mean, I've got dark hair, but I'm still very white. And they made me feel really, really welcome, except when they didn't want me to hear, so they spoke in Egyptian. But that's happened to me all over the world. I've just been invited into homes. I'm so privileged. I'm so lucky. And shown real community, which I think that's the one thing English people don't do so very well, I have to say. But I really enjoyed my travel experiences because they've made me see that we're all a little bit bonkers, we're all a little bit crazy, and that's what makes us interesting. That's what I'm going to leave that as. What do you think to that?
Well, we're all unique. And I will also mention that my mother's complexion was more fair than yours.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah, she was from Alexandria. So
wow.
It was eventually, she told my sister why. There was a Swede in our family somewhere. And she said, don't tell anybody, so because the Egyptians they're really proud of being Egyptian. That's for sure.
They are. But it is one nation that has, through the years, many cultures and civilizations have risen to great heights and then fallen. But Egypt is the only one, I was watching a program about this, that has remained because you have the Nile Delta and it's incredibly fertile, whereas a lot of the other places you find them in the middle of the desert because the river moved or, excellent. Somebody's just started drilling. Sorry, I'm so sorry about that. Can you still hear me?
It's kind of cool.
I will go and kill someone later on, but I believe in killing people, of course.
That's all right. I've been on the radio. My wife has been vacuuming, and the dog barks and.
But so it was a really interesting show that was saying the reason the Egyptians have been so with us for so long is because that Nile Delta is so fertile and they picked a really good spot to be.
They also were conquered by almost everyone who came by as it went, and they were able to assimilate them into their culture. And they were willing to, especially the ancient Egyptians, were able to kind of say, okay, all right, For example, a lot of the stories in the Old Testament are just not true about the Egyptians, historically speaking, but I can get where they come from, I can understand how they came to be. And whether they're true or not, who cares? They're interesting stories. But the Egyptians have been extremely, I found out that my grandfather, my dad's dad, had been the Minister of Finance under King Farouk and King Fuad.
Wow.
And I had no idea until recently. and that we have Turkish in our family, as well as being hardcore Egyptian, but also having Turkish. And I thought, of course, the Ottomans, and those Ottomans ruled in Egypt for a very long time, and eventually in 1952 that changed. But it's an amalgam of the world, of that area. They really do kind of think of themselves as a melting pot, and in many ways they absolutely are and have been. And I think that that's kind of the key to having open ideas and trying to be more open. I have a cousin who is a kind of a radical. He lives in Cairo. He's got an open mind. And then I have cousins who are extremely conservative. So it's just like everywhere else. It's just the way life is, But you were very lucky that you had the opportunity to sample so many different cultures and learn so much about people.
Yeah, and people fascinate me. And I think in the beginning I was running away from myself. But towards the end of that travel, I was really finding out who I was, and I'm so grateful for that. But I just wanted to say, I mean, you said Egypt had been invaded. Gosh, England, there isn't such a thing as an English person, because we've been invaded by everybody, as has Europe. I mean, Europe is as stable as it's ever been. I don't think it's ever been this stable before. We just don't like each other, and we fight all the time over, a foot and a half of land. It's ridiculous to me. But anyway, and I suppose America is a massive melting pot, as is Brazil. I mean, really, we've my parents went to Paris for their honeymoon, and everybody said to them, why are you going abroad? It really wasn't a done thing in those days. Now everybody goes to the Caribbean, to the beach, or whatever. But, it's not been that long that we've had this amount of free travel, if you talk before the pandemic, I suppose.
Yeah, pre-pandemic. Well, one of the things that happened in this country that made it so remarkable was the interstate system that Eisenhower put in back in the 50s, and it continued into the 60s, and it turned this country into a very different place. It kind of was responsible for the culture of America today. And so it's a fascinating thing, and it diversified people so much. It really changed because we began to invade each other's territories. There's a famous American movie, and maybe you've seen it or heard of it, called Easy Rider. And it's about hippies and, that sort of thing. And that time, it's really not about hippies per se, but it's about these two guys, Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. And they end up going into deep Louisiana, and that's where they meet their demise, because they've gone just a step too far in a land they should not have entered. And so I ended up moving to Louisiana with that movie in mind. And it was terrifying. I was really afraid, because by that time my hair was long, I bearded. But I discovered that you can't believe the media. You can't believe, because I met some really nice people. Was there prejudice there? Absolutely. Was it kind of backwards in some ways? And I mean, ideologically speaking, yeah, absolutely. But I met really wonderful people. You have to think for yourself. Maybe that's the biggest problem. Maybe that's where cognitive dissonance is at its height, is when people abdicate the responsibility to think clearly and to think for themselves. And it's easy to do, because it's easier to let someone else do the thinking for you. I'm constantly seeing posts on Facebook that are wrong. They're just lies. And all you have to do is do a quick check, or if you happen to know it. And I just usually tell the person gently as I can, this turns out to be not true, But
actually, you have hit the nail on the head there, and we're coming to, the end of our conversation. So it's a brilliant thing to say. It's like, because we have been so royally spoon-fed by the media, by the BBC in my case, by NBC and Fox and all these people who have been spinning us I can't say my opinion on this radio show, but let's say that they haven't been 100% truthful, and they are not being 100% truthful now. And we're all going to find out about that. I'm convinced about this. Within about a year, we'll know what's really been going on. But my point is, so we have, like in the UK, this is what we do when we go to the doctor. Hi, here are my symptoms. Give me something to deal with that. And I am wholeheartedly against that What about taking responsibility for your health, learning what you can from the internet, which of course we know now the internet, you can pretty much research anything. And, yes, I agree with, no, I won't talk about masks, but, what I wanted to hear from these health people was eat better food, get outside, get some exercise, stop watching the telly. All three of those things will help your immune system, which is what you need if you come into contact with anything, be it an infection or a virus. You need a strong base to start with. But all I saw was vaccination, pills, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that, and I'm not going to change my mind on that one. But anyway, yeah, we have been spoon-fed, and it really is time to take stock of what we believe and become more, what's the word I want, more self-sufficient, more
right. And you've hit upon something that's very important. I'm just going to mention it quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't have medical insurance for 30 years. And so I got sick and did not go to the doctor, and I lived, right? But we're dealing with a country here where a huge amount of the population has absolutely no medical insurance. I had to make a decision once. I thought I was dying. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I was pretty sure of it, and it turned out, thank God, not to be. But I made the decision that it would be cheaper for my wife to bury me than it would for me to go to the hospital and be treated.
Wow.
So I just sat there and endured it, right? Turned out it was something serious, but just not what I thought it was. And so how can that lead to a healthy attitude? Why are we so massively obese in this country? I don't know if we're massively, but there's a lot of obesity. Other countries make fun of us. It's because we don't have health care, because fast food is incredibly inexpensive.
Horribly cheap.
And it's cheap, and it's caloric, and it's satisfying, but it's also not good for you. And we know that. But we eat it because we can't afford to eat well. There are places in this country where there is no fresh produce. They're called food deserts. And
I've heard
poor people can't get food, and they get sick, and they can't go to the doctor. So this is a social thing as well. And Madison Avenue, which is the advertisers, they've been browbeating us since I was a little baby. And they're masters of telling us what to believe. So I'm just saying, this is much more than the individual. It is systemic in our society, especially where I live. And I hope it's not as prevalent where you are. But we have to take, as you said earlier, we have to take control.
What we're doing in the UK is selling out to the US. So our health system is currently being bought by the US, and we are going to end up in the same, which makes me more cross than I can say. Anyway, the whole point of this show is clearing up after your health. So yes, it is time for us to start. We know what we're supposed to eat. It's the fruits, it's the vegetables. If it's been made in a plant, don't touch it with a barge pole. If it is a plant, then eat it. So yeah, okay, so I've been given 1 minute, so I want to say, Mo, that has been so interesting. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you for having me.
Opinions. It's been I've really enjoyed it. So once again, in 2 weeks' time, which is I think the 27th, and I didn't look that up, so I'm sure it is the 27th, I have Sarah Cox on. She's a really good friend of mine, and we are going to talk about the amazing power of your thoughts, which I think is a little bit similar to what we've been talking about today. So thanks again to Scott Weaver. Please go and look at my wellness scopes. They're free, and you just click on my brain stopped working, your sign, whatever sign you are, and it'll give you a quick I have lost the power of words. That's really interesting. It will give you a quick forecast for what's going on for the month. So I'm going to do those every month. And do take a look at our group sessions. And today is 1-2 day. We've extended it, so we are on special offer today. So if you've got anything you need to ask us, both Mo and I'll be on for the rest of my evening. He'll probably be on at some stage today. So go check us out on 1-2 lessons. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed that. Much love to everybody, and thanks again to you, Mo.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again. Bye now.